Makoto was an ugly orphan child living a miserable life with his stepfather. However, one day everything changes when a monster kills his stepfather, awakening his power to destroy every monster in the world. However, before any of this, monsters ruled the entire western continent. As a last-ditch effort, humans built tall walls, dug deep moats, and trained warriors. However, everything changed when one day, a long-haired guy arrived at the kingdom. A girl accidentally meets a stranger named Makoto and mistakenly thinks he is a female traveler because of his girly looks, just like that one friend we have in group. She asks him to trick the guards by lying about seeing a girl running down the road. Makoto agrees and tells the guards the wrong direction, helping the girl avoid being caught. Once the guards are gone, Sally comes out of her hiding spot in the bushes and introduces herself to Makoto. Grateful for his help, she invites him to come to the castle where she offers him free food and a place to stay. In return, she wants to hear all about his adventures and travels. The next day, Sally decides to visit Makoto in his room at the castle. When she walks in, she is surprised to see that he looks much thinner. However, she gets an even bigger shock when she discovers that Makoto is not a girl as she had thought, but actually a boy. Inside the castle, a meeting takes place between King and a mysterious stranger. This stranger soon reveals his true identity as an ogre, a kind of supernatural creature. He demands a heavy tribute from the king, stating that he needs at least 30 people every month. When a brave knight steps forward to challenge the ogre, he is swiftly and shockingly beheaded by the creature. He then coldly remarks that this death will not count towards the monthly tribute. After this tense encounter, the ogre exits the king's presence and notices Makoto standing in the courtyard. The ogre quickly recognizes and feels uneasy. Meanwhile, Makoto, who is talking with Sally, suddenly becomes aware of the ogre's presence. He quickly excuses himself from the conversation with Sally, who does not understand what is happening. Makoto then follows the ogre, determined to find out more about his intentions and possibly stop him from causing more harm. Inside the castle, there is a lot of noise and confusion as everyone discusses how to deal with the new threat. The king comes up to Sally and tells her that it would be too dangerous for her to stay and that she should go on a journey to get some milk just like your father did. Just then, there is a loud rumbling sound from outside, catching Sally's attention. Curious, she rushes out to see what's happening. To her surprise, she sees the ogre creatures for the first time and feels compelled to get closer to them. Out in the field, Sally witnesses a gathering of ogres, including Yaki, the one who spoke to the king, and Moki, the leader of the horde. Yaki informs Moki that their plan is no longer in effect because the person who destroyed Yaki's country is inside the castle. Suddenly, Makoto appears before the horde, which excites Moki as he sees an opportunity to attack him. Just as Moki prepares to strike, Sally arrives and urgently screams at Makoto to leave immediately. Moki and Makoto are then introduced, and Moki tries to hit Makoto with a left punch. However, Makoto swiftly cuts off Moki's hand in self-defense. Makoto proceeds to unleash a fierce attack on the horde, displaying a noticeable thirst for blood. Finally, he approaches the wounded Moki and, when asked about his identity, Makoto reveals himself as a vulnerable traveler who hunts ogres. Back at the castle gates, Sally is feeling sad. Although Makoto saved her kingdom, the way he fought was frightening. Suddenly, a dog appears beside Makoto, signaling to him that it's time to move on. Sally pleads with Makoto to stay, eager to learn more about his travels and the ogre. She tries to follow him, but the sight of the fallen ogre blocks her path, and she collapses to her knees, overwhelmed by disgust. Makoto continues to walk away, and Sally calls after him, only to realize that he had left a month ago and she has been dreaming about him ever since. Gathering her resolve, Sally goes to her father and announces that she is ready to find some milk. Her father, with a smile, gives his blessing and advises her to take good care of herself. Sally's adventure starts when she comes upon a rabbit man lying in the middle of the road. Initially, she keeps her distance, but then she hears what sounds like the rabbit man's stomach growling loudly. Thinking he might be hungry, Sally quickly reaches into her backpack and pulls out a carrot to offer him. The rabbit man introduces himself as Frau, and Sally is fascinated as she has never met a demi-human before. Despite Sally's reluctance, Frau starts following her like Joe Goldberg. They travel together towards a nearby village. When they arrive, a local villager spots them and seeing that Sally is accompanied by a demi-human, he angrily tells Frau to leave. Sally thinks about obeying the village rules and parting ways with Frau, but she remembers her encounter with Makoto and decides to stick with Frau instead. To help Frau blend in, Sally lends her raincoat to cover up. With Frau now less noticeable, they both re-enter the village, hoping to find some food and a place to stay. Luckily, they meet the lord of the village who welcomes them and offers both Sally and Frau food and shelter. Sally and the village leader have dinner together while Frau goes to rest in a room that was given to her. During the meal, the leader shares with Sally the tough times the village has faced because of creatures called ogre, and how a mysterious stranger had defeated them all. He mentions that Makoto, someone Sally knew, was in the village just 2 weeks earlier. After they finish eating, the leader takes Sally to her room and shares his negative views about demi-humans like Frau, claiming they are no different from the evil demons and are enemies to all humans. Later that night, Sally wakes up by a loud crash. She discovers that a demon has attacked the village. As she faces the demon, she is too scared to move, thinking she might not survive. Just then, Frau rushes out and defeats the demon with just 2 powerful kicks. Sally is grateful and thanks Frau, who responds by saying she thinks Sally is very kind and wants to continue traveling with her. The next morning, the village leader tells Sally and Frau they must leave. Before they go, Frau thanks the leader for the carrot he had provided earlier, surprising everyone. As they leave the village, they find themselves surrounded and then captured by a group of soldiers known as the Rimdarl Knights. Sally and Frau were trapped in a small cell, but soon, they were set free by Hawthorne Gratter, the captain of the Rimdarl Knights. They were upset because they had been questioned without being given any food, and they tried to convince Hawthorne to give them some food before they left. As they were walking through the market, an unexpected explosion occurred. The explosion was caused by a huge walrus ogre named Set. Hawthorne quickly told Sally that they needed to escape, but Sally was too scared to move and seemed to be surrounded by a strange glow. Meanwhile, Frau bravely confronted the ogre and urged Sally to run away, but the ogre managed to catch Frau and threw her into the air. While Frau was in midair, Sally encouraged her to keep fighting and not lose hope. Just when it seemed like the ogre was about to hurt both of them, something incredible happened. The ogre's hand was suddenly cut off. At that moment, it was revealed that there was more to the story involving the peach from the old tale of Momotaro. It turns out that the peach that floated down the river wasn't the only magical one. Becky is sitting beneath a large tree, enjoying the sight of butterflies fluttering around the nearby flowers. Suddenly, a mysterious person appears from behind the tree and asks her why she seems sad. Becky is surprised to realize that she is not alone and hadn't sensed anyone else's presence. However, feeling a bit bored, she decides to play along with the stranger. As Becky attempts to use her special power, the stranger accidentally slices the tree in half, shocking her. The stranger then reveals that he also wants to play and asks if Meki is responsible for the earlier explosion. He mentions that it wouldn't be fun for him to defeat her while she is still recovering her powers, so he suggests having a little chat while they wait. Meanwhile, in the kingdom of Rimdarl, Sally is locked in a fierce battle with Set, the enormous walrus ogre. Set is thrilled to have the opportunity to fight not just one, but 2 strong opponents in a single day. He launches an attack on Sally, attempting to punch her, but she skillfully manages to block his fist. Meanwhile, Meki finds herself seated next to the fallen tree trunk, left behind after it was cut down. Curiosity sparks within her, and she asks the stranger if he is the famous demon hunter who travels around, defeating ogre creatures on his journey. The stranger is surprised that she knows about him and inquires about the reason behind the ogre's attack on the city. Meki explains that humans have been cutting down trees and moving stones to construct a castle, which makes them the enemies of her kind. The stranger accuses her of seeking revenge due to the anger caused by losing her land. After 5 minutes, Meki's powers are fully restored, and she decides to attack the stranger, seeing him as a threat. He laughs in response, challenging her to try. In the city, Set confronts Sally, perceiving her as a threat. He unleashes his powerful attack, called Kihu, but to his surprise, Sally manages to survive. Sally seems unaware of the explosion and looks around, determined not to let Set harm anyone again. Drawing her sword, she swiftly strikes her enemy, defeating him in the process. However, the battle takes its toll on her, and she eventually passes out. Makoto decides to make things easier for Meki, and he does something really surprising. He hurts his own leg with his katana and then goes on to tell Meki to use her ogre beam on him, but somehow he manages to survive it too. But here's where things get really intense. He pushes Meki down to the ground and tells her his name is Makoto Kibitsu. He claims to be a sworn enemy of the ogre, the creatures that Meki belongs to. And then, he does something really cruel. He cuts off her horn and stabs her eye, which turns out to be the power source for her kind. But wait, out of nowhere, a dog shows up and this dog asks Makoto why he hasn't killed Meki. And Makoto says something really mean. He tells the dog that without her power, Meki is just like any other human. and that's his way of torturing her. Later that day, when the sun is going down, this mysterious person shows up and says that he's found the person he's been looking for. Sally wakes up and sees Frau right next to her. Frau tells her that she's defeated the ogre, those scary creatures. And then, Hawthorne gives Sally her sword, confirming what the Hairfolk had told her before. Just then, Hawthorne asks them to follow him, and they end up in a cell. Sally and Frau get really shocked because they think they're being arrested again. But Hawthorne assures them that they're not in trouble. He shows them another girl who's sleeping in the cell. He tells them that she might be an ogre too, and asks Sally and Frau to stay in the cell and guard her. Hawthorne leaves the room, and that's when Frau tells Sally something important. She says that the girl in the cell is actually pretending to be asleep. Frau asks Meki if she remembers who she is, but Meki says that she's an ogre and tries to attack Frau. But then she realizes that her power is gone, thanks to that guy Makoto. After hearing Makoto's name, Sally tells Meki that she believes she's an ogre, but she also warns her that if the guards find out, she might be executed. Meki says that she'd prefer to die, but that really annoys Sally. So, Sally orders Frau to help them escape. While all this is happening, a guard rushes into Hawthorne's quarters and informs him that the prisoner has escaped, and it seems like Sally and Frau helped her get away. Meanwhile, Sally is seen sprinting away from the knights. Just as she's running, Hawthorne shows up on his horse. He tries to stop them because he's a knight and it's his duty, but out of nowhere, Frau kicks him. Hawthorne then asks Frau if she understands the seriousness of what she's doing. Frau responds by saying she's just trying to get away as fast as she can because they're in a tight spot. Just then, as one of the knights is handing the reins to his captain, something unbelievable happens. Suddenly, the entire city is wiped out, leaving everyone completely shocked. Hawthorne is so shocked to see the town destroyed that he falls to his knees. At that moment, Sumki shows up and tells Carrot that he has come to help because she asked for backup. Sumki is just about to attack Sally when suddenly, a voice commands him to stop. The voice warns that harming Sally would lead to serious problems. It turns out that Sumki is being called back by the group he is working with. Sally quickly helps Hawthorne regain his senses and urges him that they need to keep moving. Hawthorne agrees and suggests that they should head to the next town. Carrot decides to join them and mentions that there is another town close by that they can reach on foot. When the group finally arrives at the new town, they do not feel welcomed at all. They try to find a place to stay and go to an inn, but the innkeeper initially refuses to let them in. However, when he recognizes Hawthorne, he changes his mind. Hawthorne then gives Sally his bag of money to buy some food. As Sally takes the money, she notices that Hawthorne seems to be back to his normal self, calm and composed. After Sally leaves the inn, Hawthorne suddenly falls to the ground. Concerned, Carrot asks him what is bothering him. Hawthorne expresses his feelings of powerlessness. Frau, being supportive, reassures him that everything will be alright and encourages him to cheer up. To calm himself, Hawthorne decides to take a walk outside the inn. It is then revealed that Frau is the one who gave Carrot her name. Meanwhile, Sally unexpectedly comes across Makoto and is filled with excitement. They sit down and engage in a conversation. Sally expresses her confusion about the prejudice that exists among different species. In response, Makoto explains that fear and ignorance could be the reasons behind such prejudice. On the other hand, Sumeragi mentions to Sumki that he is fortunate to have stopped him in time, as the princess would have killed him otherwise. This makes Sumki angry, and he questions Sumeragi about who gave him the order. Sumeragi replies, "The first." Returning to Sally and Makoto, Sally asks if Makoto will join her on her journey to combat the prejudice between species. However, Makoto declines, stating that he prefers to travel alone as it is simpler for him. After that, Hawthorne is standing in front of the inn when a female soldier approaches him and gives him a hug. Sally returns to the inn and notices another person there, and she quickly assumes it is a girl. However, Hawthorne corrects her and introduces the person as a boy named Barrett. Sally introduces herself and the rest of the group. It is then that Sally discovers that Frau has given the ogre girl the name Carrot. Hawthorne asks Barrett what happened, and Barrett explains that he was suddenly transported to the forest. Hearing his story, Hawthorne speculates that the Witch of the Western Forest might be responsible for teleporting Barrett. At the same time, a girl wearing a robe is observed watching Sally through a magical orb. Later at night, Sumeragi and Carrot can be seen having a conversation in the forest. Sumeragi proposes to Carrot that she can return to her ogre people if she agrees to be his spy and report the group's actions back to him. Sumeragi later meets up with Sister Milia and requests her assistance with something. Meanwhile, Sally and the group find themselves standing in front of a colossal tree house. As the group enters Winnie's home, they are amazed to find that she lives in a gigantic old tree that also serves as a bar. Suddenly, Winnie appears from behind and reveals that she had been eagerly awaiting their arrival. Hawthorne expresses his gratitude to Winnie for saving his friend and asks why she was there. Winnie explains that she was simply reading when she sensed something strange happening nearby, and Hawthorne's friend happened to be the closest person she could assist. Curious, Sally asks Winnie to demonstrate some of her magical abilities. In response, Winnie puts on a small magic show. Impressed, Sally gathers the courage to ask Winnie if she would be willing to teach her magic. Winnie hesitates at first, as teaching magic is not something she usually does. However, she senses that Sally can be trusted and believes that Sally would not betray her. Winnie explains that anyone can learn magic, but the more widely it is used, the less valuable it becomes. Winnie had a few conditions before she would teach Sally magic. The first condition was that Sally can't tell anyone about it. The second condition was that Sally had to do whatever Winnie said without questioning it. And the third condition was that Sally had to pay Winnie 1,000,000 coins. Well, that's a lot of money, to be honest. I would rather buy lots of anime girls' pillows. Sally didn't have that kind of money, and even though Winnie was willing to give them a discount, they still couldn't afford it. Feeling let down, Sally decides to ask Hawthorne for some help. She wants to learn how to handle a sword, so she requests him to teach her. Hawthorne agrees, and they start her training right away. He quickly notices that Sally's sword skills are quite basic. Although she is smaller than him, Sally keeps trying to use brute force to win, which isn't really working in her favor. She needs to use smarter tactics that suit her size and strength. After they finish practicing, Winnie pulls Hawthorne to one side to show him something important. She shows him a video of a fight Sally had previously with someone named Set. Watching the video, Hawthorne is totally surprised. Sally is incredibly strong and skilled in that fight, which is hard to believe considering how she struggled during their training. It is a real eye-opener for Hawthorne to see this other side of Sally's abilities. As the sun begins to set, Winnie offers Sally and her friends a place to spend the night. However, there is a condition: they have to clean the rooms. While they are tidying up, Frau pays a visit to Winnie. It turns out that they are old friends, and there seems to be more to Frau than meets the eye. Frau pleads with Winnie to teach Sally, and after some consideration, Winnie agrees. But there is a catch: Sally will have to repay her in some way. The next morning, Winnie shares the good news with Sally, who is overjoyed at the opportunity. Sally has only just begun her training when suddenly a lizardman and an elf appear. They approach Winnie with a request to remove a barrier that is protecting a dangerous ogre. They want to destroy it because of the harm it has caused to a nearby kingdom. Winnie agrees to help, however with only one condition: that Sally and her party can join them. When they reach the location of the ogre, they discover that another ogre named Milia initially mocks Carrot for joining humans and losing her powers. However, Sally steps in when Milia attacks. Carrot reveals that Milia has the power to control her hair. Suddenly, the tree ogre awakens, and it is determined to kill Sally. However, Sally tells everyone that they are going to fight together. Elsewhere, Sumki complains to Sumeragi for going to extreme measures to kill the group with the tree ogre, which he can do in a moment. Suddenly, they see a lone traveler, and Sumki attacks him. However, Sumeragi is surprised to see that the guy is Makoto. He literally slices off Sumki's head so smooth, just like cutting a cake. Initially, the lizardmen and elves are unsure about working together, but after some time, they decide to team up to defeat the tree ogre. Watching this, Milia is surprised to see that the demi-humans are willing to follow a human leader. Despite the initial unease, Sally steps up with a hopeful idea. She suggests that rather than continuing to fight, they should all aim for peace. Her proposal includes not just humans and demi-humans, but also the ogres, aiming to create harmony among all groups. Unfortunately, the tree ogre doesn't like the idea of peace. It quickly grabs Sally and threatens to squish her with its huge roots. But something amazing happens. Sally's secret powers suddenly activate, allowing her to easily break free from the ogre's grip. Once she's safe, the tree ogre starts talking to her. It reveals that ogres are born from human hatred and are always destined to fight against humans. The ogre also tells Sally that she represents the other side of this never-ending conflict. It suggests that she might hold the key to changing their fated encounters. The tree ogre then turns its attention to Milia, thinking she is too weak to make it in their harsh world. To Milia's surprise, Sally steps in to shield her. At this moment, Sally realizes that while there might be a chance to connect with Milia, the tree ogre is impossible to reason with. Sally sees that her only option is to fight the tree ogre. Meanwhile, Makoto is in the middle of a chat with Sumeragi, who surprisingly brings up the idea of peace. Sumeragi comments on Makoto's lack of sophistication for a human, which is quite rude. However, Makoto chooses to let Sumeragi go unharmed. He explains that his decision is based on his trust in Sally's judgment, not because he believes in the strange ogre. This shows Makoto's loyalty to Sally and his belief in her ability to handle the situation, even though he doesn't quite trust the ogre's intentions. After a powerful punch, Sally defeats the tree ogre, impressing both the lizard men and the elves. Winnie comes up to Sally to congratulate her, but Sally is exhausted and just wants to rest. In the midst of all the commotion, Milia manages to slip away, probably feeling scared after witnessing Sally's incredible strength. When Sally wakes up the next day, she discovers Hawthorne at the bar, deeply engrossed in a conversation with the leaders of the elves and lizardmen. Seeing them all together, peacefully talking, Sally is amazed and happy to see that her plan for unity is starting to come together. It's a wonderful sight to witness, and Sally feels a sense of accomplishment knowing that her efforts are making a difference in bringing different groups together. On a night with a bright moon, a lady walks through the quiet streets. Suddenly, she is attacked and tragically killed by a mysterious person. Meanwhile, Sally and her group continue their journey on foot. Hawthorne warns them that in the last town, he overheard a guard talking about vampire attacks in the town they're heading to. The guard mentioned finding lifeless bodies with no blood left. Frau tells them they're getting close to the city, but Sally, feeling uneasy after hearing this news, suggests camping outside the town instead. Hawthorne laughs it off, saying there's nothing to worry about. He even mentions that the vampire attacks seem to target only beautiful girls, implying that Sally wouldn't be in danger. This angers Sally, and she punches Hawthorne in the face. As Sally and her group enter the town, they quickly notice that the locals don't seem to like demi-humans. They hear people whispering about them as they walk by. Carrot, feeling upset, suggests that Sally should use her special peach power to teach the townspeople a lesson. But Sally explains that her power only works against ogres, not humans. This makes Carrot even more frustrated because she thinks it's unfair to use powers on others but not on their own kind. When they arrive at an inn in the city, Hawthorne notices the unfriendly reactions from the locals and advises against bringing a demi-human inside. Sally wonders if Hawthorne could use his title to help, but he tells her that his title doesn't hold any influence here because they have entered the territory of Rimdarl. Despite the unfriendly vibes, Frau tries to cheer everyone up by offering to shop for supplies while the others get a room at the inn. Carrot joins her, not wanting Frau to be alone in such a hostile environment. Together, they head to the market. At a stall selling carrots, the owner, seeing Frau as a demi-human, reluctantly allows her to buy but tells her not to stay too long. Frau buys a carrot and pays, but the owner rudely tosses her change on the ground, implying she should pick it up herself. Back at the inn, Sally and Hawthorne are settling into their room. Hawthorne tells Sally that he's worried about how Frau is being treated unfairly. He's afraid that Carrot might do something risky after seeing such unfairness. Sally feels responsible and concerned, so she decides to find Frau and Carrot to make sure everything is alright. She quickly leaves the room, determined to catch up with them in the market. Later that night, Frau and Carrot are sitting on the ground, having a deep talk. Carrot, who used to be a big creature, asks Frau why people are mean to her and why she doesn't fight back. Frau explains that she has gotten used to it and that it's only people like Sally who make it a little easier for her. But Carrot gets upset by this answer. She says that Sally is willing to use her powers against others but not against their own kind, which she thinks is unfair. Carrot raises her voice, expressing her frustration and saying that both she and Hawthorne have become too dependent on Sally's powers. Needing some fresh air, Carrot goes for a walk. During her stroll, she overhears two women talking about a vampire attacking the city. Curious, Carrot decides to look for the vampire. She then feels a familiar power close by and wonders if its owner could be a threat to all the humans in the city. At the same time, Sally is walking down the street and stops at a seafood stall. Seeing the seafood reminds her of a scary event from her past involving an octopus when she was a princess. Suddenly, her special ability, known as Peach Eye, kicks in unexpectedly. As night falls, Carrot finally finds the vampire, a powerful ogre named Kukitsuki. He's surprised to see another ogre and mentions that it's been a while since he last saw one. Curious, Carrot asks Kukitsuki if he could help her by getting rid of all the humans in the town. but Kyukitsuki wonders why Carrot can't do it herself and is shocked to learn that she's no longer an ogre. When Kyukitsuki hears about Sally's actions, especially her killing of Set, he decides to assist Carrot. He expresses his desire to fight and kill Sally, believing she's too dangerous to be alive. Just as they're discussing their plans, Frau arrives on the scene. Kyukitsuki tries to dismiss her, but Frau stands her ground. They engage in a fierce battle, but it becomes clear that Kyukitsuki is much more powerful. He uses his Kihu technique to deliver a fatal blow to Frau, leaving Carrot and Sally in shock. As Sally sees her friend lying lifeless, anger takes over and she attacks Kyukitsuki in a fit of rage. At first, Kyukitsuki underestimates Sally's strength, thinking she's slow like the hairfolk. But to his surprise, Sally lands a powerful punch, making him cough up blood. Kyukitsuki fights back, using his blood manipulation ability, but he's shocked to find that Sally remains unharmed. She reveals her immunity to ogre powers, but Kyukitsuki cleverly binds her clothes to the ground, trying to bite and kill her. Carrot steps in, launching an attack on Kyukitsuki. Confused, Kyukitsuki questions Carrot's motive for protecting a human. Carrot explains that she considers Sally a friend, unlike other humans. Kyukitsuki decides to eliminate both of them. Meanwhile, Frau wakes up in a strange place, later revealed to be heaven. She's confused and sees Atra, an angel she recognizes. Atra is surprised to see Frau and explains that this is the second time she has died this year. Frau asks Atra to revive her and restore some of her original power. Atra hesitates, explaining that Frau's current body may not handle that much power. After some convincing, Atra agrees to grant Frau's request. After Frau's upper body starts to heal, she miraculously comes back to life and undergoes a mysterious transformation. The vampire notices something strange about her blood and attacks, thinking she might be a demon. But to his surprise, Frau counters his assault and blasts away his hardened blood. She then disappears and reappears, delivering a fatal blow to the vampire. However, she collapses afterward. As the vampire dies, he reveals a shocking truth. He had hidden his power within his fangs and once killed his fiancée. With time running out, the vampire requests the group to quickly move Frau away from people before sunrise. Frau wakes up and is surprised to see Atra sitting next to her on the bed. She quickly asks the angel if she has passed away again. Atra calms her down, assuring her that she is still alive and in the mortal world. The blonde girl then shares that after a tough battle with Kyukitsuki, Frau fainted, and her friends brought her to this room in the inn. She adds that Sally and Carrot have gone to the town to buy some carrots, while Hawthorne is standing guard outside the door. Atra explains that she enters the room through the window. Although Sally and the others are surprised to see her in her angelic form, they do not say anything about it. Frau is pleased to hear this, but Atra suggests that it might be better for Frau to give up her powers as it could be hard for her to keep appearing in this form. The hairfolk thanks her, but Atra insists that thanks is unnecessary since they are friends. Suddenly, Hawthorne bursts into the room, thinking he has heard a noise. He is shocked to find Frau in her original form. This unexpected entry brings a moment of surprise but also reassurance that Frau is truly back with them. Carrot and Sally were walking down the street when Carrot wondered why they were buying carrots instead of medicine. Sally explained that carrots had surprisingly helped Frau recover during their fight with the walrus ogre, unlike the usual medicines. As they continued their walk, Carrot suddenly changed the subject and asked Sally if she was responsible for ending Set's life. Sally confessed that she did, stating she only uses her power when absolutely necessary, and she didn't regret her actions. While they were deep in conversation, a market stall owner interrupted them. He was upset about their intense discussion near his stall as it was driving away customers. He rudely told Carrot to keep away from demi-humans, claiming they might look like humans but were inferior and just animals on the inside. This comment angers Sally, and she couldn't hold back. In a swift motion, she punched the man, knocking him to the ground. Meanwhile, high above the village, Atra was flying when she noticed the spirit of Kyukitsuki. Curious, she approached him and asked if he was truly dead and why he was lingering around. Kyukitsuki shared that the villagers were burning his body, a sight he felt compelled to witness. He explained that he had been connected to his physical form for 300 years and wanted to be present as it turned to ashes. Back at the inn, the group is having a discussion. Carrot suggests that they should leave because Sally punched a villager, and now the soldiers might be looking for them. Hawthorne is shocked by this news. Later that night, Makoto and Dog are walking through a forest when they realize they're being followed. Makoto can tell from the footsteps that there's only one person chasing them. He gets ready to fight and attacks, but to his surprise, he finds a little girl dressed as a nun crying. They decide to take a break and Makoto starts cooking a meal. They assure the girl that they won't harm her and invite her to join them. She asks if she really looks like a sister and mentions that she has lost some of her memory. She introduces herself as Milia. After dinner, Makoto approaches the sleeping girl and confirms that she's an ogre. He prepares to draw his sword, but Dog stops him. The following day, Makoto and his friends were on their way to the town when they encountered an ogre. This ogre shared that he had been given orders to capture someone named Hatsuki, but now he wanted to kill her because he believed she didn't deserve to live. This shocked Hatsuki, and she suddenly remembered her true identity. She challenged the ogre, questioning how he, without a name, dared to attack someone of a higher status. Despite her brave words, the ogre managed to injure her. Makoto, who was watching the scene, commented nonchalantly that he would wait for their battle to end and then eliminate whoever survived. Frightened by the thought of dying, Hatsuki made a drastic decision to remove her own horn, hoping that by appearing more human, Makoto would feel compelled to rescue her. Unfortunately, this caused her to lose a lot of blood, and she fainted. When Hatsuki regained consciousness, she found herself in an inn and realized that Makoto had indeed saved her, just as she had hoped. Curious, she asked him if he had killed the ogre. Makoto explained that though his initial plan was to deal with the ogre, he had to prioritize stopping her bleeding first, so he let the ogre escape. Grateful for Makoto's help, Hatsuki thanked him and reintroduced herself. She expressed her happiness at traveling with him and suggested they should consider themselves partners. However, Makoto hesitated to accept this label. Hatsuki playfully insisted, telling him not to be shy and promising that their journey together would be as carefree as if they were two girls on a trip. After some days, Hawthorne wins in a tournament fight. However, Sally, Frau, and Carrot seem bored and just clap politely. Hawthorne comes over all excited, asking if they saw his moves. But Sally, being her usual blunt self, tells him he's only lucky because his opponent was weak, and then she walks away. Later on, they're walking down a dark corridor, and Carrot asks Sally if it's okay for them to leave Hawthorne behind. Sally admits she's not really interested in him. But then the ogre girl asks why Hawthorne is even participating in the tournament. Sally says it's probably for the reward of 300 gold coins for the winner. But Frau surprises everyone by saying she thinks it's just because Hawthorne is passionate about it, which shocks the group. As they keep walking, Sally suddenly spots Makoto in the crowd and decides to chase after him, leaving her friends behind. She manages to catch up with him on the street and calls out his name. Makoto turns around and says it's been a while since they last met. Sally and Makoto decide to sit down on a bench to chat for a while. Makoto apologizes because all he can offer her is a free cup of water, explaining that he does not have any money. Through a flashback, we learn that Makoto is broke because Milia has used up all his funds. Despite his current financial situation, Makoto sounds hopeful about not being broke for much longer. Sally wonders if he's thinking about joining the tournament, but Makoto shares that it's actually Milia who will be fighting in the tournament, not him. Right after this, the scene shifts to the arena where Milia is in a match. She defeats her opponent but seems frustrated because she's not as strong as she used to be after losing her ogre powers. It's clear that even without her powers, she's still a formidable competitor, but she feels the difference. While all that's happening with Sally, Makoto, and Milia, there's another scene with Sumeragi and this ogre guy near an old church. The ogre guy is feeling sorry for himself because he messed up on his mission, but Sumeragi reassures him that it's not his fault. He says the opponent they were up against was just too strong. While they're talking, this young girl shows up and demands to be carried. The ogre guy wonders what's up with her, but then this other guy named Sumki insults him and tells him not to disrespect his master. Turns out, the girl's name is Juselino, and she's an ogre god. These ogre gods are super powerful beings among the ogres. Sumeragi realizes they need to do proper introductions, so he tells everyone the girl's name and apologizes to her. He even agrees to carry her on his shoulders. With that, they start walking towards this summoning circle only to find Sumeragi hosting an ogre assembly. As soon as they reach the summoning circle, it activates, and a bunch of ogres appear out of nowhere. Sumeragi takes this moment to declare the start of the 672 ogre assembly. He first shows everyone a map that depicts how much land they used to control on the continent. Then, he shows a second map that highlights their much smaller area of influence now. This revelation shocks all the ogres present. Sumeragi explains that the reason for their reduced power is the Peach Boy, Makoto, who has defeated many ogres, including Set. One of the ogres, named Todoroki, questions Sumeragi, asking why he is not rallying them to fight against Makoto. Instead of answering directly, Sumeragi presents them with the severed head of Sumki as evidence of Makoto's threat. He also falsely claims that Meki had been tortured and killed by Makoto. This news enraged Todoroki, especially since he had feelings for Meki. Overwhelmed by anger and the desire for revenge, Todoroki makes up his mind to take down the Peach Boy himself. In the city, Hawthorne is stretching when Juscelino comes up to him. She asks him to carry her again. Hawthorne wonders if she is lost, but she says she is waiting for someone. Hawthorne decides to walk with her and introduces himself. While they are walking, they run into Sumeragi, who tells Hawthorne that he is Juscelino's guardian and a priest. Then, the ogre asks Hawthorne if he is going to take part in the tournament that day. Sumeragi also tells Juscelino that it is fine for her to support Hawthorne. Meanwhile, Milia is also getting ready for the tournament. Makoto tells her that even though he can't be there to support her, he will pray for her well-being. This makes Milia blush. So, Hawthorne and Juscelino meet up in the city, and Sumeragi, an ogre priest, joins them. They talk about the upcoming tournament, and Makoto wishes Milia good luck. Hawthorne is getting ready for his next fight when he hears Juscelino's voice in the crowd. At the same time, Sally is also in the crowd and complains that it is too noisy. Then, Sumeragi approaches Sally and introduces himself. He tells her that his goal is the same as hers, to have ogres and humans live together peacefully. Suddenly, Makoto appears and warns Sally to stay away from Sumeragi because he is the enemy. Makoto claims that Sumeragi is a powerful high ogre. Sumeragi confirms this, but he also says that if Sally cooperates with him, her goal of ogres and humans living together could become a reality. However, Makoto tells Sally not to trust Sumeragi and to choose the side of her friends. Makoto and Sumeragi both have their hands out, waiting for Sally to pick one. After thinking for a bit, Sally steps forward and surprisingly chooses Makoto, even though she does not agree with his morals. But she still chooses him. When Makoto sees this, he has a really unexpected reaction and runs away. Sally chases after him until he stops and tells her that he should actually choose Sumeragi's side because no matter how many monsters he kills, he just can't find peace. All of a sudden, the walls of the city breaks, and 3 scary demons, including Todoroki, show up. These monsters go into the city, leaving a boy who is sleeping outside. At the same time, they announce that the tournament is cancelled because of the monster invasion. They say that any adventurer who brings back a monster's head will get 500 gold coins as a reward. But there is a guy named Hawthorne who does not care about the reward and leaves the building. As he is walking, he happens to meet his first opponent from the tournament. They walk together for a while, but then something strange happens. A big, dark cloud forms in the sky and burns Hawthorne's former opponent. Out of nowhere, Todoroki appears and mistakes Hawthorne for the Peach Boy. Meanwhile, Frau and Carrot are relaxing at the inn when they hear a loud noise like lightning. Carrot uses her special eye to see that their friends are in trouble. At the same time, Sally asks Sumeragi for help in stopping the other monsters, but Sumeragi says no. Outside the city, Makoto spots the sleeping boy from earlier and is about to attack him, but then he suddenly faints. Meanwhile, Frau and Carrot rush to help, but out of nowhere, Frau gets attacked by a bird monster. However, Carrot bumps into her former ally, Shiki, who tries to hurt her. On the other side, Sally tries to reason with Sumeragi by punching him, but her powers do not work, showing that Sumeragi is just a regular human. In return, Sumeragi punches her back to make things fair. Now, let's go back to Hawthorne. He throws his sword into the air to block Todoroki's attack, but somehow ends up with a wooden sword. However, Todoroki does not give up and attacks again. Fortunately, Hawthorne easily dodges the attacks and runs into an alleyway. Todoroki chases after him, but soon realizes it is a trap set by Hawthorne. Hawthorne strikes Todoroki with his sword, knocking him down. However, Todoroki quickly gets up, angry at the cheap trick, and unleashes his full power to attack Hawthorne. But when Hawthorne opens his eyes, he is shocked to see Winnie, who has come to rescue him. Once upon a time, in a distant land, an elderly couple lives together. One sunny day, the man ventures up the nearby mountain to gather firewood, while the woman makes her way to the riverside to wash their clothes. Many years pass, and the same couple bids farewell to their beloved son. As a parting gift, they present him with an ancient katana, a traditional Japanese sword, and a generous supply of his favorite dumplings to enjoy during his travels. The young man hesitates, thinking the sword must be valuable, but his father reassures him that it is meant to protect him from the dangers he might encounter on his journey. The son, whose name is Hiko, accepts the gifts gratefully. Later in the story, Hiko sets off on his adventure and unexpectedly comes across a hungry dog. Moved by compassion, he shares one of the dumplings his mother has lovingly prepared. To his astonishment, the dog speaks and expresses its gratitude. The dog explains that due to its unique ability, it is shunned by its own kind and even attacked by humans. To survive, the dog has to pretend to be half dead to receive any food. Recognizing Hiko's kindness, the dog asks if it can accompany him on his journey. After a while, Hiko and the dog take a break near what seems to be a tea house. The dog asks Hiko if he is truly searching for his real parents. Hiko nods and shares that he wants to find out why they placed him in a basket and sent him floating down the river. Suddenly, a villager rushes towards them, shouting about an ogre, a mythical creature, attacking the town. Hiko and the dog decide to investigate the situation. As they approach, they witness a massive ogre wreaking havoc, devouring the villagers in its path. Hiko stands frozen in fear but gathers the courage to shout at the ogre, demanding it to stop. The ogre questions Hiko's identity and why he dares to defy it. Nervously, Hiko tries to say his name but stumbles over his words due to fear. The monster lunges at Hiko, but to everyone's surprise, he miraculously survives the attack. In that moment, Hiko draws his sword and swiftly slices the ogre in half, proclaiming himself as Peach Boy. The villagers surround Hiko, expressing their gratitude for saving their village. They thank him for his bravery and hail him as their hero. Word starts spreading about Hiko's impressive feat of slaying an ogre, and soon rumors begin to circulate throughout the land. These rumors cause Hiko to shift his focus from searching for his biological parents to hunting down and eliminating ogres instead. He makes up his mind to travel to an island known as Ogre Island, where the leader of the ogres resides, believing that by defeating him, the battle will finally come to an end. Upon reaching the island, Hiko engages in fierce battles, taking down every ogre in his path. However, just as he is about to finish off the boss, the ogre warns him that his demise will bring forth the Kishin. Despite this warning, Hiko emerges victorious, freeing the land from the tyranny of the ogres. The people hail him as a hero, grateful for his bravery and determination. Seeking solace, Hiko builds a secluded house deep in the mountains. However, his peace is interrupted when an ogre named Gaki appears at his doorstep. Gaki reveals a tragic tale of love and loss, explaining that he has fallen in love with a human woman and has a child with her. Unfortunately, one night, he ends up taking his wife's life. Gaki entrusts his son to people he trusts, and pleads with Hiko to end his life. Later that day, Hiko ventures into a nearby village and discovers a young man named Makoto tied up, ready to be publicly shamed. Hiko frees him, but the villagers, blinded by prejudice, label him a monster who deserves to die. Feeling a sense of responsibility, Hiko brings Makoto to his house. Makoto, overwhelmed by fear and despair, asks Hiko to end his life. In response, Hiko reveals that he has already avenged Makoto's father by killing him. He assures Makoto that until the day he becomes strong enough to exact his own revenge, Hiko will protect and care for him. And so, Hiko and Makoto's journey together begins. Hiko takes on the role of a mentor, teaching Makoto essential skills like reading and hunting. One evening, as they are enjoying a bath, Hiko asks Makoto for his name. Makoto feels unsure about his name and thinks it is silly. Understanding his hesitation, Hiko kindly offers Makoto the option to use his own name instead. However, their peaceful existence is soon disrupted when a massive group of ogres appears nearby, announcing the arrival of the Kishin, who turns out to be the powerful god of laws named Nobrega. Sensing the danger, Hiko realizes it is time for Makoto to step into adulthood and face the challenges ahead. But Makoto, overwhelmed by fear and uncertainty, refuses to comply with Hiko's wishes and runs away into the night. Later, as Makoto finds himself deep in the forest, he encounters a mysterious dog who warns him not to go any further. Ignoring the dog's advice, Makoto continues on his path, only to discover Hiko lying on the ground, gravely injured, with Nobrega standing nearby. In his final moments, Hiko imparts valuable wisdom to Makoto, urging him to embrace himself and others, and entrusts him with his katana as a symbol of protection and pride. With a smile on his face, Hiko takes his last breath, and his powers transfer to Makoto. Filled with grief and determination, Makoto unleashes his newfound abilities and stops Nobrega's attack. Suddenly, Makoto gets closer to the ogre and cuts the ogre's arm. With a sad look on his face, Makoto brutally murders the ogre and then goes on to pull out the horn on his head. Makoto, with a devilish grin on his face, promises to kill every ogre. In the end, Milia can be seen carrying the unconscious Makoto on her back. Todoroki was really surprised and asked about Winnie. Surprisingly, Winnie revealed that she's actually the witch of the Western Forest. She scolded Hawthorne for using a wooden sword and gave him a new one. But this new sword is no ordinary sword, my friend. When Hawthorne holds it, he can feel its heart beating. Not to be outdone, Todoroki also creates an electric sword and quickly rushes to attack. Meanwhile, poor Frau is lying on the ground after being beaten by the bird ogre. Just then, the bird ogre decides to fly away and help Todoroki instead. However, Frau quickly gets up and remembers that Atra left some powers in her. Her eyes turn red, and she gets back on her feet in no time. Suddenly, she cuts one of the monster's wings and goes on to slice it into pieces just the way I like my KFC's fried chicken. But the action does not stop there. Carrot is running away from Shinky, but unfortunately, she gets cornered. Shinky tries his final attack, but Carrot manages to dodge it, causing Shinky to get stuck. As expected, Carrot finishes him off with her last attack. Now, on the other end of the battle, Sally gets up and is all set to fight Sumeragi. However, Sumeragi just laughs it off and reveals that he was only testing her. He lets her go without any harm. But before leaving, Sally stops and extends her hand towards him, inviting him to join her. She wants his help in making the coexistence of ogres and humans possible. In the middle of the fight, Todoroki tries to hit Hawthorne, but his attacks do not seem to have any effect. During the battle, Todoroki looks at his cap and remembers his tough past. He was often bullied by other ogres because he couldn't control his powers. But everything changed one night when Carrot came to him and gave him a special cap. This cap helped control his powers and also hid his horn. Back in the current fight, Todoroki decides to go all out and prepares to launch his powerful attack, Ragin' Ogre Thunder. This time, his attack is much powerful than before. Hawthorne is a bit unsure at first but stands strong when the witch encourages him to believe in himself. As both Todoroki and Hawthorne launch their attacks at the same time, Hawthorne's new sword proves to be superior. He manages to cut through Todoroki's swords and also badly injures him. Meanwhile, the mid-ogre can hardly believe what she's seeing from the sidelines. She's shocked by the outcome of the fight, but Juscelino tells her that she was actually rooting for Hawthorne all along. Later at the inn, Todoroki is surprisingly still alive, and is shocked to find both himself and Carrot unharmed. At the same time, Winnie, Hawthorne, and Sally are discussing Hawthorne's victory over Todoroki. During their conversation, Hawthorne confesses that he didn't want Todoroki to survive because Todoroki had killed an innocent person. Hawthorne also admits that although the fight could have resolved the issue, his deep dislike for Todoroki prevented a peaceful solution. In a different inn, Makoto suddenly wakes up, calling out father, and almost attacks Milia. Luckily, a dog intervenes and calms the situation down. Despite the calm, Milia expresses her frustration about the tournament being cancelled. Sally and the gang are back together. Winnie says her goodbyes and tells Sally that she'll be keeping an eye on her through her special sphere. Out of the blue, Sally surprises everyone by inviting Todoroki to join their group. Hawthorne does not seem too thrilled about it, but he keeps his rejection hidden from the main character. Todoroki, on the other hand, initially disagrees with the idea of coexisting with humans. But then, Frau says something really cool that makes Todoroki pause and look towards Carrot. It seems like Carrot's presence has a big impact on his decision. Todoroki decides to live for her and support Sally, but he also makes it clear that he'll find his own way to coexist with humans. As Todoroki leaves through the city gates, he comes across Sumeragi waiting for him. Filled with anger, Todoroki attacks Sumeragi and demands to know why he lied about Carrot being alive. He also expresses his resentment towards the death of Shinky and his bird-like monster friends. However, in a surprising turn of events, Sumeragi effortlessly defeats Todoroki by making a donut out of him. Sumeragi cruelly tells him to greet his friends in heaven. That's it for today, my fellow men of culture. Like and subscribe to the channel for more plot-filled recaps.